From the same studio that brought you Secret of the Kells and Wolfwalkers comes a brand new animated film premiering on Netflix, My Father's Dragon. In the really charming story of a boy and his dragon, we wanted to do a quick breakdown of its characters and where they fall on the morality spectrum.
Dragon does what I make him do, and so should you.
I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is My Father's Dragon, Good to Most Heroic. Now, fair warning, this video contains massive spoilers for the film, so you may want to go check it out first for yourself. Now, since there aren't any real evil characters in the movie, we're instead going to be starting out with the characters who are the most flawed, and working our way up to the most noble. For our least good character, we had to give that honor to Quan the macaque. Quan is Seiwa's right-hand ape, although the two don't exactly share the same ideals when it comes to the island and its inhabitants. Although he's loyal to Seiwa for the most part, he's easily agitated by other animals whenever they start to freak out, often yelling at them and telling them to shut up. He cares less about their well-being and more about simple obedience. Quan also often comes off as stubborn, aggressive, reckless, and single-minded, especially when it comes to saving the island. Because he's so focused on recapturing Boris, he's pretty much forced to help or rescue other animals. Now, we can't blame Quan too much for this, as we understand that he's acting out of his own fear of drowning, but sometimes he can take his actions too far. It's even implied that he threatened Iris's baby so that she would tell him where Elmer and Boris were. Eventually, Quan gets fed up with Seiwa, completely losing faith in him. Instead of staying to help evacuate the island, Quan focuses on rescuing and taking care of himself. Again, not that we can blame him, but it is still a selfish act. Next from the bottom, we have Sasha and George, the tiger siblings. These two come off as very typical siblings. Throughout their only scene, we see them almost constantly squabbling over various rewards, whether it be the credit for capturing Boris or the meal that they can make out of Elmer.
You look just like a sweet, juicy melon.
As such, they come off as pretty greedy, but also pretty curious given how easily they get distracted. While them threatening to eat Elmer is pretty dark, we will acknowledge that they are, well, tigers, circle of life and all that. They weren't being cruel necessarily, just overly eager and hungry. Still, for the trouble that they did cause, we had to give them a low ranking. Following is Cornelius the crocodile. This guy's certainly a bit intimidating. Like the tiger siblings, he tries to attack and eat Elmer. However, we will give Cornelius credit that, at the very least, food and rewards aren't the only things on his mind. In fact, the most important thing to Cornelius are his babies, who he tries to keep safe. He's a very protective and caring father, even if he still isn't the most friendly to strangers. In the end though, we do see him showing gratitude to Elmer and Boris for their heroics, so at least we got a bit of growth from him. Taking a break from the residents of Wild Island, we're ranking Kaylee, Gertie, and Eugene next. There are three kids who live in the city of Nevergreen, and who act as sidewalk storytellers as a way to earn some extra coins. While they may look out for each other, they can be pretty protective of their turf, as Elmer quickly learns as he tries to earn some sidewalk money himself. Kaylee, the tough leader of the group, is someone who believes in fair is fair. As such, she's unafraid to fight for what she feels she deserves, leading to her and the other storytellers stealing the coin that Elmer earned for selling rubber bands. It's really not a good look, but given that the film takes place during a recession, we can't totally blame these kids for doing what they need in order to survive. What saves them from a lower ranking is that at the end of the film, we see the storytellers welcome Elmer into their group, and the four of them are able to work together to tell stories and earn money. Next we have Tamir. While acting on fear seems to be a theme within the film, Tamir definitely embodies it the most out of anyone else in the cast. He's very easily panicked, and spends most of the film being worried or giving other characters warnings, fully believing that they're all doomed.
I just don't want to drown. I don't want to drown. I don't want to drown.
But ironically enough, for as fearful as Tamir is, he actually stays by Seiwa's side throughout the film, being more loyal to him than Quan turned out to be. We also have to give him credit for caring more about the other animals than Quan, hence why he kept giving warnings instead of trying to push his fears aside, like Seiwa encouraged him to do. While Tamir doesn't do a ton in the story, we feel that he manages to rise above some of the other characters based on the small actions he does end up taking. taking. Speaking of which, Seiwa is going to rank next. Seiwa is the leader of the island, as well as the one who originally captured Boris, forcing him to lift up the island over and over. Maybe in another sort of film, Seiwa would have been considered as just your standard villain. However, there's actually more to Seiwa than one might think, even if he is still pretty flawed. If you had to sum it up, we'd say he's more of a focuses on the big picture and the ends justify the means sort of guy.
If we surrender to panic, I cannot save you.
We see this in not only how he uses Boris, but also in how he tries to keep the animals of his island calm, because he doesn't want their fear to eat them alive. He'd rather just try and sweep away all the concerns, insisting that he knows the answer, and that he'll be the one taking care of the massive problem that they face. Although his main goal throughout the film is to recapture Boris and save his island, he doesn't go to as many extremes as Quan does. Whenever another animal needs help or is in danger, Seiwa is willing to put his mission aside to help them. It's made very clear that he cares deeply about the island's animals, and reminds Quan several times that they can't abandon them. While he may not care as much about Boris's well-being, he actually does save Elmer from drowning, despite being angry at him. In the end, Seiwa realizes that he was wrong to keep the truth from his people, despite his best intentions. He then acknowledges his wrongs and apologizes for them, promising to help the next dragon that comes to their island instead of simply using it for his own means. It's a really great ending for a character like him, and while he may not have always been in the right, we still felt like he deserved a decent spot. In a similar vein to Seiwa, we also have another leader of sorts, that being the landlord, Mrs. McLaren. When we first meet Mrs. McLaren, she comes off as very grumpy and strict when it comes to the rent and the apartments that she's renting out. She even tries to charge extra when she learns that Della has a kid with her.
Kids are loud and they're rough on the furniture.
We can't say that she's being super greedy, however. She even explains herself, telling Della that she can't be too careful, given how desperate people can be in a recession. Although she isn't too trusting and for the most part tries to look out for herself, Mrs. McLaren is occasionally willing to compromise. We also see that she secretly sympathizes with Della and Elmer, and is happy when they're reunited, even offering them her umbrella as well as fixing their pipes afterwards. Like Seiwa, she's not a bad person per se. She just comes off as someone who could be a bad guy, but is willing to make a change. Entering the top half of our list, we have Iris the rhinoceros. Iris is actually one of the friendlier animals that Elmer meets on Wild Island, only starting out as somewhat aggressive because she's afraid of not only herself but her baby. When Elmer shows kindness to her baby, Iris immediately returns the favor and lies to Seiwa about where he and Boris are, protecting them and allowing them to continue their search. Technically, she does betray the two later on, but it's made obvious that this was done reluctantly. She remains friends with the two of them after this as well, forgiving Elmer for lying to her, and even returning his backpack. While rhinos may not always be the friendliest animals in nature, Iris definitely manages to break past this stereotype. Next up, we have the cat, simply known as the Cat. While she may not have a name, she manages to stand out as another one of Elmer's allies. Though she can be a bit mischievous, she's also incredibly friendly, becoming loyal to Elmer after he brings her milk. She then follows him when he runs away, and as a way to return his kindness, tells him about Boris and where to find him.
I got you a ride.
Although the cat is sometimes a bit forgetful, like when she doesn't warn Elmer about all the wild animals on the island, this never comes off as truly malicious. While her role in the film is relatively small, it's still her advice that kicks off Elmer's adventure, so we do have to give her some credit. Just outside our podium of goodness, we're ranking Soda the whale. True to her name, Soda is friendly, excitable, and incredibly bubbly. She immediately agrees to give Elmer a ride to Wild Island, and while she can be a bit socially awkward and overly friendly, as well as a bit careless when it comes to her swimming and water spouting, Soda has a genuine good heart.
One night I want to swim all the way to the stars.
She gets Elmer some tangerines when he's hungry, and at the end of the film, is shown being kind to Quan even if he isn't the friendliest to her. Overall, this whale is just incredibly pure-hearted, and if it weren't for her small role in the story, she likely would have made our top 3. For our bronze medal of good, we're giving it to Della, Elmer's mother. Like the best animated mothers out there, Della is kind, caring, and encouraging towards her son. While losing her business and having to move to Nevergreen strain is very stressful on her. She does her best to keep her son from worrying. Unfortunately, these good intentions do backfire somewhat, for as much as she tries to be patient and keep her hopes for their future store, she does end up losing her temper when things start to get truly frustrating. We're not going to blame Della too much though, as she was worried about losing the only home that she and Elmer have left. We also have to give Della credit for finally being honest with Elmer when he returns home from his adventure, acknowledging her own fear and showing that she understands how her son feels. Earning the Silver Medal of Good is the film's protagonist, Elmer. There are a lot of things to like about Elmer, as the start of the film shows. He's friendly, helpful, and very good at finding things, doing all he can to assist his mother in their store. Throughout most of the film, we see him extend kindness to several other characters through his generosity, like when he gave Iris his baby tangerines, or when he comforts Boris, even going so far as to share the stuff in his backpack with him, despite Elmer's previous reservations. As for flaws, his determination can sometimes come off as stubbornness or being self-centered. Like any other kid, he can get easily frustrated or impatient and sometimes acts on fear, which leads to him making poor choices or being dishonest. We also see Elmer struggle with trusting Boris, once again letting his own fear blind him. In the end, however, he does go back for Boris after Sewa helps him realize how wrong he was, finally telling the truth about how scared he gets and encouraging Boris to get his fire. Afterwards, he lets Boris go home despite their deal, wanting Boris to see his family again. While he's far from perfect, we see Elmer grow throughout the film, becoming an even better person and showing how truly kind he is at his core. And finally, our gold medal of good has to go to Boris the Dragon. Although he was forced to lift up Wild Island so it didn't completely sink, with this being a painful and scary process for him, Boris never held any resentment towards the residents of Wild Island. While yes, he partially wants to help them as a way to get his fire and his After Dragon status, he also genuinely wants to save the animals that live there. Although he can be a bit clumsy, awkward, and even clueless at times, the moments where he makes a mistake or inadvertently pushes Elmer's boundaries, it's never done so maliciously, and he always means well.
Pretty sure I could go faster if you showed me what's in there.
We also see Boris become more brave over time, which leads him to jumping into the mysterious core of the island in order to save it. He forgives Sewa for capturing him without hesitation, and Boris is even willing to postpone his own homecoming with his family in order to fulfill his end of the deal he made with Elmer. If dragons truly do make for good friends, then we'd have to say that this film certainly proves that point well. Boris has a pure heart through and through, and we're more than happy to give him the gold medal of good. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.